There is a hand look quilt stitch on this machine. Now, this is going to make your machine stitch like you're stitching by hand, even though if you flip it over, it's not going to look exactly, well, like hand. But this is kind of neat. You do see it kind of written in some of the magazines or you hear it on quilting shows. So this stitch is in row 2, stitch number 2. It'll look like just a straight stitch on your screen. But notice that the tension has been increased, and oftentimes I will increase this even more. Here's how you set up the machine for it. First off, you're going to use clear thread in the needle. The color of the stitch is going to be whatever you have in your bobbin. Now, when I use clear thread, this is kind of like a teenager that does not like to behave. So I put it on a thread stand. Now, you can buy thread stands. I prefer the ones with the metal base, because then they don't move around on your sewing table or fall over. So look for a nice sturdy one. And then at the top, there's a place where we're going to run the thread up to. So we're going to set it on the base, run the thread up to the top, and then we'll bring it over to the first guide of the sewing machine. So I'm going to set this kind of right behind the hand wheel of the machine. Now keep in mind, when you are done using the thread stand, don't leave thread hanging down over here, because the hand wheel will find it and it will suck it in and it will take the entire spool in. And then that's just not a pretty sight when your service technician opens it up and hands you this big wad of thread that got stuck in there. And definitely you don't want clear thread stuck. So I never leave any thread on that thread stand when I'm not actually using it. Now, before I go to rethread, I'm going to show you a little trick. You clip your thread up here and pull it out the needle, you will help keep your machine nice and clean instead of dragging some of that fuzzy thread and lint from fabrics up into the other moving parts of your machine. So if you can get in the habit, it's great. Clip the thread, pull it out, and now we're going to, and once again, don't leave this just hanging out. Take it off the machine, and we'll just put the little spool cap back in that place. But we're just bringing it across, and then we're going to thread the machine. Now this is kind of wildy thread. This stitch is not a perfect stitch. It is a manipulated stitch. I'm sure somebody back in the day was sewing along with some kind of crazy thread like this. Probably fishing line from maybe a husband's fishing tackle box back when we were trying different things and before we had thread available to us on spools that's much finer and nicer for the sewing machines. So here's where we're going to start stitching. We're going to see how this actually goes. It's going to take a couple stitches forward, couple back, and a couple forward. What I'm looking for is when it jumps back, that it's pulling enough of the bobbin thread up. And right now it's pulling up a little, so I'm going to go ahead and I usually crank up the tension closer to 8 or 9. Don't be afraid to do this. Let's start, I just went over to 8.2 and we'll see the difference. This is kind of neat to show off for your friends. It makes it look like it's hand quilted, but it's not. Definitely put a walking foot on when you're doing this if you're going through batting and layers. But here's the difference. So at the beginning when I started out, here we go, it was okay. But can you see where it looks like two little spots? It just wasn't pulling that thread up enough. But as soon as I increase the tension to a higher number, it really pulls it back. Now, the part that looks like it's separated, that's the clear thread. So what it does is it takes a stitch forward and then takes a stitch back. And when it comes back, it's tight. So it drags that bobbin thread up and to the top part of your fabric. Then it takes another stitch to lock it, and then it takes 2 stitches forward. Once to hop over where the colored thread is, and then once more to get to where the next stitch will start. So it looks like it's done by hand, but when you flip it over, it does have kind of a little different look. You can tell where the machine is stitched back and forth multiple times to create that stitch on the front. But isn't that so cool? At a distance, you can't tell that that wasn't done by hand, and how quick it can be done on your new machine.